Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha Kodesh. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Isaiah, the 32nd chapter, the glorious future. So this is Isaiah 32:1. Behold, a king shall reign in righteousness, and princes shall rule in judgment. Now, when you read in Isaiah, the 32nd chapter, a lot of these things that Isaiah mentions, right, a good portion of it is all future prophecy at different points in the future. But he is putting it all in this chapter here, at least as we have it broken down into a chapter, right? So dealing with verse 1, behold, a king shall reign in righteousness, which ultimately this king is going to be Yahushai, and princes shall rule in judgment, right? Because we know that in Israel, you're going to have many kings, but that's why Yahushai has the title King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And Isaiah also references him back in, I believe, Isaiah, I think it's the 11th chapter. Let me just double check that. Either the 11th chapter or the 2nd chapter. Let's see. Yep, the 11th chapter. So this is something that's going to happen in the future, right? There's going to come a point in time where the Lord is going to gather Israel, set us back in our homeland, and appoint or set over us a righteous king, one that is going to reign in righteousness, and princes that shall rule in judgment. And in this case, the princes here would be the other kings that are under Yahushai, because a prince to a king in this context is likened onto one that is also an authority and also a form of a ruler, but under the king right now, on the same exact level as that king. So as where you would have one king over everything, you would have princes in different regions or in different parts that would help rule the kingdom along with that king. As it says here, and princes shall rule in judgment. So this is going to be a righteous reign. And a man shall be as an hiding place from the wind and a covert from the tempest. Now in verse 2, Isaiah is describing here another point in prophecy, but this is more pertinent to the times where you're going to have this wind, tempest, and so on, which these represent the different forms of judgment and destruction that is going to be taking place on the earth in the time of Jacob's trouble, right? The time leading up until the glorious kingdom, which would be ruled by that righteous king. So in verse 2, Isaiah is using similes, right, or metaphors to describe what a man of the Lord is going to be likened onto in that time. And that's why he mentions a man shall be as an hiding place from the wind. So imagine it's a very windy or stormy time. The urgency with which people seek to hide themselves in a building, right, or a shelter or something of that sort. Being stuck in the midst of a crazy storm and then finally finding a place to hide or get safety from the storm, that relief, that feeling you get there, that's what it's going to be like to either find or be with a man of the Lord in that time, as the dangers out here are going to be likened onto that wild, crazy wind. Continuing in the verse, and a covert from the tempest, which the tempest is hand in hand with the wind, right? Because the tempest goes into the lightnings, right? So it says here, rain shower, thunderstorm, flood of rain, downpour, rainstorm, and along with thunderstorms comes what? Lightnings. And so a covert, which is a shelter, Isaiah's just reiterating what he said up above. Finding a man of the Lord is going to be like finding a shelter during a crazy thunderstorm, or as rivers of water in a dry place. Imagine being in a very hot, almost desert-like area, and the sun is beaming, the ground is, your feet are burning up, you're tired and dehydrated, and then you find a body of a stream or a river, that relief in which you like run to that river to try and get some water, that's like what it's going to be like once again, to find or be with the men of the Lord in this time, as the shadow of a great rock in a weary land, right? So you get the message, once again, a dry, hot place, and then you find the shade, this cool shade cast by this rock. That's what it's going to be like. Verse 3, and the eyes of them that see shall not be dim, and the ears of them that hear shall hearken, right? Which means that there's going to come a point in time where ultimately that blindness or that covering that was cast over our people is going to be removed. But in this verse and a couple of the verses, maybe the one after that, it starts with the elect, right? That process starts with the elect, and then you see it applied to the rest of the nation in full, right? Because those that have eyes to see, starting with the elect, the Lord opened up their eyes that it was no longer dim, and the ears of them that hear shall hearken. So in prophecy from the time of Isaiah, during the latter days, the first ones who would exhibit this were the elect, right? The believers who, hearing this word, they hearkened onto it. And you read about, Isaiah mentions a similar process in the previous chapter, right? The 31st chapter, and I believe even the 30th chapter. But in the 31st chapter, he talks about turning back to the Lord whom Israel hath forsaken, and casting away those idols, and those idols being like a menstruous cloth to you. Okay, so this would be the process of turning back to the Lord. Verse 4, the heart also of the rash shall understand knowledge. And the rash, so basically those that beforehand were either very, quick to speak, rather than taking the time to understand the situation first and then assess it and then make a move, they're just like quick. And in doing that, they make a lot of errors and tend to go off a lot. But as it says here, the heart, which is the mind of the rash, shall understand, right? They shall be taught knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. And the tongue of the stammerers, those that may not be good speakers, shall be ready to speak plainly. See, so this is a transition, which, as I mentioned, starting with the elect, brothers were like that back in the world. And then hearing this word, there's that change, right? There's that change in behavior. There's that change in thinking. There's that change in even speaking, which is going to ultimately transition, right, into fullness in the kingdom, to where it's going to be a reverse of the wonder the Lord did or put upon Israel, where he took away the wise men and the orators and that state of renown and respect from Israel, and brought us to the state of, majority of people being like babbling buffoons. Not all of them, but the Lord is going to reverse that, and we're going to go back to speaking and articulating in a proper manner, right? Being wise of heart, right? So that's why I said it starts with the elect on this side, but ultimately the whole nation is going to see, right? Eventually the Lord is going to lift that covering, that darkness that is off of the eyes of our people, right? And their heart and their ears that were made heavy and fat. The Lord is going to undo that. Verse 5, and that's why I mentioned that this is mainly all prophetic, but it's just different points in prophecy that Isaiah is describing. Verse, and it makes sense, right? Because he's still prophesying to the people, but and it would still apply to them, but some of these would apply to them in a different time period, right? So when Isaiah is speaking to them, and he's telling them, like, for example, when we go out, or when starting with our elders and apostles, when they started going out and they were prophesying of the same thing, right? The same kind of calamities, the same kind of destruction would come to you people, right? To you Israelites. Now, it wasn't it wasn't only to those very exact Israelites that were standing there or were looking at them the first time they went out there. It was to Israelites in general. Because by the time those judgments would take hold upon Israel, it could have been a point, it could have been even a generation or two after. Right? What I mean is, like, you could have had a very old Israelite listening at that time, and maybe in their particular lifetime they wouldn't have seen the judgment that was being prophesied onto them, but they might have come back into reincarnation and then suffered the same thing. Okay, so though this is what Isaiah might be telling them, right, could have been 100 or a couple of decades, a couple of centuries, or even some thousands of years after, it would still be the same people coming back to relive or to suffer those judgments. Verse 5: the vile person shall be no more called liberal, nor the churl said to be bountiful. Which if you consider this in a general manner, right, about the vile person, right now, and even throughout history and prophecy, the one nation of people, if you were to look and categorize nations by attributes, the one first nation of people that would fit this would be the Edomites. And in this version of their generation, now it's really, they've had that nature always, but it's been now that they've been put in a position to where they can freely express that in its fullness, and you can see how vile they are. So they would be likened onto this vile person over here, that shall be no more called liberal. Now let's look into a couple of these words here, starting with the word vile and then liberal. So we have here Nabal, foolish, senseless, fool, right? Stupid, wicked, foolish, a vile person. See what else we got here. Stupid, foolish, impious, abandoned, wicked, right? So this vile person, this foolish person, this stupid person, this wicked person shall be no more called liberal, which we have the word liberal here. It was like nadayab. And it says willing, noble, generous, right? Princely in rank, noble one. So when you look at Esau today, he was considered or looked at as noble, high rank. Though in nature, they're really vile. Now you may say, well, but how is it that they come up with like all these inventions and all these things? How are they foolish if they do all that? Them coming up with that is through the actual ones who the Lord opened the minds of to be able to actually invent those things were not these top Edomites, right? These elites of the world per se. For them, at most, the Lord put an idea or a plan into their mind that he had the plan be executed in an intricate fashion to be successful so that prophecy can come to pass. But when you really look into the technology and all the things that they've like pushed, it was different scientists and scholars, people who specialize in these fields that actually did the work of inventing it, right? And they weren't all Edomites. Some of them were Edomites. Some of them were Moabites. Some of them Ammonites. Some of them even Jake. But obviously, the one who assumes credit is going to be the one in rulership right now, who probably appointed them to say, hey, invent something that does this, invent something that does that. Okay. And when you look at what they're actually doing and what they're trying to do, it is foolish. It is vain. It is hopeless. If they sat down and broke down their plan to you and you were like, why? Oh, we just want that total control. For what? And you think that by going this route is going to be the way to do it, it's foolish. It's all destructive. And you would think, how can you achieve a sustainable power or rulership when you're using constant means of destruction? By the time you're done, the damn planet and people you're trying to rule will be dead. And then you think that you're going to do this not by appealing to the Most High, the Creator, but by actually opposing and fighting the Most High. So when you actually break down the things they're doing, why they're doing it, and how they plan to achieve it, it's really foolish. right? But anyway, they're being considered, right, liberal, like noble, like they're the ones. Well, it's an example. If they say something, they know it's qualified. If we say something, nah, you don't know what you're talking about. Nor the churl said to be bountiful. Once again, it's making Isaiah's making the same point here, but nonetheless, let's look into these words again. So let's look up churl and bountiful. So here we have churl, bountiful. That looks like kaya la. Forgive me if I'm mispronouncing that. But it says here scoundrel or knave, and look at that, niggardly, churl. Looking in the strong in the lexicon, right? Fraudulent, specifically for this verse. Fraudulent, deceitful, crafty. That fits Esau to a T, right? So the fraudulent, the deceitful, the devil is no longer going to be called bountiful, okay? Which looks like Shawai. And it says here, independent, noble, free, rich, generous. And why Isaiah is saying they're no longer going to be called these things. Why were they called that in the first place? Why were they said to be bountiful when they're really crafty? Because of the craft, because of the deception to hide wickedness and hide the true nature of themselves and the things they're doing, and code it in what looks like it's generous, what looks like it's it's them caring about others. We'll give you free jump shots, all right, for whatever situation you're going through. Oh wow, they're so generous, we don't have to pay for it. Meanwhile, the truth of the matter is, well, then whatever it is they're trying to protect you from, they actually put it out there, and now the protection is not really even protection, it's really the thing itself. When you see that, you're like, oh, so you're not really an angel, you're a demon, right? Those are some examples of them, why they were being vile and being the churl, why they were labeled as liberal and bountiful. It's all through deception. Anyway, in process of time, this would be no more. And it started when the Lord put the Spirit upon his men to come and start exposing them. So now that they're being exposed, right, the scriptures say that the man of sin had to be revealed first. See, so by them being revealed, by the Spirit of the Lord put on the prophets to come out here, and also their tongue falling upon them, their insiders coming out and exposing them, that has now starting to open the eyes of people to see them no more as liberal and bountiful, but rather like, yo, these guys are really, you're a piece of work. And that's only going to, that energy and that truth is only gonna grow more and more and more until, you get to the point where it's known fact. It's not even a question or a doubt what the true nature of this devil is. Verse 6, for the vile person will speak villainy, and his heart will work iniquity, because that's their nature, right? They're going to speak villainy. They're going to speak evil things. Their heart will work iniquity. That's their inner thoughts, their plans, and the ideas that they devise, right? To practice hypocrisy. You'll see this devil will put a law in place that says, if you do this, if you break this law, you're this, that, and the third, and you're going to go to jail. And they will break that same law on a geopolitical level, on a national level. Do the same things they say you can't do and go and do it to other countries. A whole hypocrite. And when you go into that, it's actually go into that word hypocrisy, right? It also lists a couple of other things there, right? As you can see, hypocrisy, godlessness, profaneness. And that's what you see going on all around the place. That's what has allowed this place to really take hold of its name, Babylon, right? The root of that being Babal, which is confusion. That's all you see going on here. And to utter error against the Lord, right? To utter falsehoods and false things against the Lord. And that's what they've been doing, to where the minds of people are now corrupt against the Most High. People don't know who the Heavenly Father actually is, because their minds have been corrupted. This devil has pushed out error and falsehoods time and time and time again about the Lord and his nature, his appearance, all of these things. to make empty the soul of the hungry, right? And he will cause the drink of the thirsty to fail. So ultimately, who are the hungry and who are the thirsty? That really is us, right? Israel. When you look at, if you were to look at ranked nations of the earth in terms of uh, not status per se, but um, let's use the word income for I'm blanking on a good word to use here. But if you were to look at like a national income, and I'm not talking about income in the literal sense of actual income, but like how much you have to sustain you. Israelites on a national level would be considered poor, right? They would be like, well, one of the poor nations, not because we lack potential or any of that, but because of the condition that we're in now, being subject to a system that is working against you. So the way that they make empty the soul of the hungry is they'll put you in a position to where your the jobs that are easily accessible for you that you can achieve are ones that are like a hamster running on a wheel. You constantly work paycheck to paycheck. You never really have a surplus, right? It's always, that's why you have Jake constantly singing the tune of "On My Grind." They always have to be on their grind or hustling in order to make ends meet. So that's depriving, as it's worded here, the soul of the hungry, keeping them constantly hungry. So they're always in this cycle, in this loop. And then you look at where you stay, and then you look at the conditions Esau has set up to where your money is constantly being taken from you. You have to constantly pay for things. So he sets up a system to where you can never have more than what will barely keep you alive. And that'll keep you in that low state. Verse 7, the instruments also of the churl are evil, right? So his means of implementation are evil. He devises evil in his mind, and the way he goes about to establish it are through evil practices, be it health wise, right? Um, Medical wise, job wise, morality wise, it's all evil. He deviseth wicked devices to destroy the poor with lying words, even when the needy speaketh right. So how many cases have you had where Jake today will call it injustice, where you weren't in the wrong, but because you were an Israelite, because you're considered the poor here, it's worked against you, whether it's the court system or whatever process it is, it's worked against you. How many times has that happened? And it's like it's common, it's even accepted, because that is a part of the wicked devices, the plans and the schemes that this devil has set up to destroy the poor. Now, if you want to really see an example, you want to see how some of their nature and true effect, go back and look at either read or research about some of the atrocities that they committed. Not even like you could go back as far as chattel slavery, but even from then all the way leading up before this time here where they started to take the shackles off of people, what you'll see is their nature truly come out because they're unrestricted by how the world will perceive them or anything, any of those things. So you could see like, okay, if you gave an Edomite this power and this freedom and this range, how would they actually act? And then that's where you get the stories of them, doing this to Israelite people and doing that and doing this, and your Emmett Tills and all of those. Those come out because now you have the true nature of a particular people unrestricted, just out there, and they have the power to execute upon it. Verse 7, the instrument, like the concept of that is, if you training your dog to say, hey, for example, I've trained my dog to where they don't eat unless I give them the command to eat. Well, if you really want to test, you want to put that to the test, put a hidden camera over there, put their food over there. The best kind that you've ever made them. It's hot, it's steaming, it's smelling good, it's going through their nostrils. Put it there and then leave. And then come back, whatever, 10 minutes, 15, even 30 minutes later, and see what happens over there. And the reason I say put a camera over there is because they might lick it or they might not. But you'll get to see when there's nobody around to stop them, what are they actually going to do when in their mind they feel like, okay, I have the power, the free range, unrestricted to do what I want to do. What am I actually going to do? Then you'll see on the camera, is your dog really trained or not? So that's like the example that I was given. Like when you go back in time during the time of slavery, you'll see that's like the example of leaving the dog alone. It's doing whatever the hell it wants to do, right? At least Esau Edom, that's what he was doing. Because now the nature is still there, but they try to hide it with these words and these, stories and covers and all of those things. And even just like the way they go about executing their devices. They try to like code it to where it looks like it's actually humane. Anyway, verse 8, but the liberal deviseth liberal things, right? So the churl, right, and this vile person that was being called and considered liberal and bountiful, they're doing all these things. They have evil practices, but one that is actually liberal, one that is actually righteous and generous would do the things of that nature, right? And by liberal things shall he stand. So they wouldn't reign with evil means and practices. And eventually that's going to happen when Israel is set back up into power. They're going to be the true liberal ones. Verse 9, rise up, ye women that are at ease. See, so now the focus is now on the women here, as Isaiah is forewarning them. Why? Because of the calamities they're going to be going through as well. Keep in mind that Isaiah is prophesying concerning things he has seen. So he talks about this. It's like when we're at camp. When we're at camp, we talk about a whole variety of things. We may start off talking about one thing, then it may lead into us talking about another thing. Then we may, that may lead into us talking about another thing. Because sometimes as you're speaking, the Spirit might just direct you to start speaking about something else, because all the things you're speaking of are still fair game, because they're still all going to happen. They might not all directly be in chronological order, but the Spirit has it come out how it comes out. So as Isaiah gives warning here in verse 9, rise up, ye women that are at ease. Hear my voice, ye careless daughters. So the women that are of the mindset that that no evil can harm them or touch them, therefore they live this carefree lifestyle, being likened unto careless daughters here. Isaiah says, give ear to my speech. So take heed to what I'm about to tell you. Many days and years shall ye be troubled, which I believe this in the Hebrew, it's like many days in a year, right? Or many days on a year shall ye be troubled. And it really just represents there's going to come a period of time where you're going to be troubled. You're going to be stressed. You're going to be struggling. Ye careless women. For the vintage shall fail. And the vintage was like the grape back then. It was like the grape gathering. And the harvest shall not come, which that was the regular gathering. And so why would this be trouble unto them? Because everybody was happy during the harvest, right? We got a whole lot of things. And once the reapers did their thing, and then the crops were threshed, and then you got the grain, then the women would then get to grinding, right? They would grind it in the millstone, and then they would get their the flour that they needed. They would get the flour that they needed, and then boom, they'd go from there, do what they got to do. But here Isaiah is saying hard times are coming. No more gathering, no more crops, no more, none of that is coming in. Verse 11, tremble ye women that are at ease, be troubled ye careless ones. See, strip you and make you bare, and gird sackcloth upon your loins, meaning get ready to mourn, because you're about to start going through some hard times. Because when you go into verse 10, what is a woman going to do when that gathering and that vintage isn't coming? Women weren't the ones plowing. They weren't the husbandmen. They weren't the ones doing all that. They were the ones who got what was after the harvest, and then they would prepare it. So the equivalent of that in this time is the benefits and the easy lifestyle where you can basically get anything at the tip of your fingers or the snap of your fingers. That's going to be out the window. And so that kind of lifestyle that has made women so comfortable that they don't worry about anything in the world, it's going to cease just like that. And they're going to struggle. Verse 12, they shall lament for the teats. When you go into the word teats, it goes into breast. So, really the wording is, or should be, they're going to lament, they're going to lament upon their breasts, right? Like somebody that's stressed out, beating upon their chest, like showing true anguish, right? As it says here, NLT, beat your breasts in sorrow, right? And that's actually when people are hitting, that was actually a sign of like, they're in pain or they're suffering. So as it says, they shall lament for the teats, for the pleasant fields, for the fruitful vine. So the days where, there would be the harvest, because during the harvest, during the gathering, people would sing, right? While they were trotting down the wine, the grapes to get the blood of the grapes to make the wine. It was a joyful time. People would sing, having a good time. But the image here that Isaiah is painting is when this judgment comes from the Lord, it's going to be the opposite of that. Now, Isaiah uses the way of life from during his time, but in our time now, right, it's not the same exact way, right? We're not the ones actually plowing. We're not the ones actually treading upon these grapes. We get the finished product in supermarkets. But the equivalent of all the gathering and all that not coming is going to be that you're going to have those food shortages. You're going to go there and you're not going to find anything. You're going to try to order and there's going to be nothing there. Empty shelves. And that's going to, mess people up. Verse 13, upon the land of my people shall come up thorns and briars, yea, upon all houses of joy in the joyous city. So as Isaiah mentioned, I think in the 24th verse, that the joy and the mirth in the land is ceased, it is gone. Here he's describing, actually let's read the 14th verse along with it. Because the palaces shall be forsaken, the multitude of the city shall be left. The word left there goes into deserted or abandoned, right? So the bulk of the city is going to be abandoned. The forts and towers shall be for dens forever. Forever here meaning for a duration or a period of time. That's why it's broken up. The word ever goes into like a time. So it can be a long time. It can be a period of time. It can be a age. Right? In the Hebrew, it's iwalam. Right? It says here, long duration, antiquity, futurity, forever, ever, everlasting, ancient time, long time. Okay? So it doesn't always mean indefinite. That is one meaning of it, but it doesn't always mean indefinite. And we know that according to prophecy, that's not going to be the case for Israel. Israel's not going to be in this state indefinitely, right? So it's going to be like this for a period of time. A joy of wild asses and pasture of flocks. Now, though Isaiah was speaking of this maybe over 100 years or so before it happened, this ended up happening, right? When the Babylonians came in there and they destroyed the walls and so on and so forth. Eventually, what was left in a major portion of the city was just emptiness, like thorns, briars, grass and stuff growing. That's why it's likened onto a joy for the wild asses and pasture for the flocks, because they could come there and eat all that without being, driven away because nobody's there or there's very few people left in the land. In fact, it was majority of the land was so abandoned, you had Edomites come up in there and started taking some of the villages and the territory of Israel. But in this time, it's not going to be, because the actual land of Israel, what's happening there is not really affecting the people of Israel as much as when we dwelt in the land. However, this hardship is going to be felt in the different habitations where Jake is scattered today. Verse 15, until the Spirit be poured upon us from on high, and the wilderness be a fruitful field. Now, the wilderness and the fruitful field and the forest, these are describing the dwelling place of Israel. When you read in, I think it was either the previous chapter or the chapter before, um, Isaiah mentioned, I think it was Lebanon becoming a forest, and then the forest becoming, like more than that, which represented like abundance. So Isaiah is saying here, until the time where the Lord pours His Spirit upon us, right, to with graciousness, and then that's when the blessings, right, start to take hold upon us, and the wilderness shall be a fruitful field. So a land that is, it's really a transition of state, right? So a land that is likened onto like a wilderness because of the judgment now becomes like a fruitful field. And then that which was likened unto a fruitful field now becomes like a forest. Then judgment shall dwell in the wilderness, and the judgment here refers to justice, shall dwell in the wilderness, and righteousness remain in the fruitful field. So once again, these are the dwelling place or the habitation of Israel. And this is going to be when the Lord brings that deliverance. He delivers Israel, gathers His elect, and then that the blessings begin to pour upon us, Lord willing, we're of that number, in abundance. It says here, and the work of righteousness shall be peace, and the effect of righteousness, quietness, and assurance forever. So as a result of the righteous acts that not only are being done now, right, via the elect, mainly the prophets prophesying and teaching the words of the Lord, but remember we read up above that there's going to be a king that's going to reign in righteousness. So the fruit of that kingdom is going to be peace, right? And the effect of that righteous rulership is going to be, as it says, quietness and assurance forever. And so that is also going to be likened onto the reward that's going to come onto those that turn from wickedness to righteousness, having to dwell in a safe place, being assured of peace no matter what the situation is. As it goes into in verse 18, and my people shall dwell in a peaceful habitation and in sure dwellings. A sure dwelling means that it's assured. It's there's no doubt about it that it's you're going to be good over here. And in quiet resting places, when it shall hail, coming down on the forest, and the city shall be in a low place. So what this is saying is, even right in the case of, once again, like if there was a hailstorm right upon that forest, or if that city was brought down to a low place, my people would still be dwelling, peacefully, right? Basically, no danger or no evil is going to harm you or affect you. Verse 20, blessed are ye that sow beside all waters, that send forth thither the feet of the ox and the ass. And this is a visual of peace and, once again, abundance, right? So the harvest, of Israel in that time is going to be like those that are sowing, meaning to plant, by the coast, right, or places where there's water, because that's going to lead to that a very fruitful harvest, as you have enough water to sustain the crops. Okay, and then sending forth the feet of the ox and the ass. The ox and the ass are one used for plowing, right, and also used for threshing. So what that's signifying is Israel is now in a state of peace where you can freely have your ox and your ass, create those furrows for you as you plow, and then freely have them thresh. Like there's no threat, there's no limitation, there's no restriction that we would have to worry about, but rather living in a habitation of peace and abundance. But you always have to remember that Isaiah, not only does he speak in a poetic manner, right, in some of these verses here, and use sometimes dark sayings and metaphors, but also he uses the way of speaking and the manners of the time he's living in. Okay, so sometimes when you read some of these verses, you can look at the other translations, but also it's worth actually going and researching, like, hey, like, what does this mean? You know, like, why would somebody do this? And why would doing this signify peace or signify calamities? So when you get a better understanding of what it meant when somebody did X, Y, and Z, you can see why Isaiah compares that to the message he is giving. Anyway, that brings us to the end of the book of Isaiah, the 32nd chapter. Lord willing, this was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham Recha Kudash. And until next time, Shalom.